Hey everybody, and today I'm going to be giving a small book talk on the murder mystery genre. So, the murder mystery genre is a part of crime fiction, and it involves a murder with a victim, a murderer, or in some cases, murderers. And obviously, we have the suspects and the detective. So, whenever someone asks me what is your go-to book for the murder mystery genre, it will always be an Agatha Christie book, either an Hercule Poirot book or a Miss Marple book. Now, before I start this book talk, I would just like to give a small introduction on Agatha Christie. Now, Agatha Christie is the queen of crime, and she's an English author who has written 66 detective novels and 14 short stories. Some of her stories are under the name Mary Westmacott, and her stories are mostly famous for the two fictitious characters, or the two fictitious detectives, Hercule Poirot and Miss Marple. So let me first tell you how I came in touch with Agatha Christie and how I started loving it from I won't say I started loving it from the first read, but when I kept reading it, I was totally engrossed, and I began like kind of finishing all the series, and oh my god, it's just amazing. So let me begin by telling you how I got to know Agatha Christie. Now, the story goes like this. I knew my dad had like these many books of Agatha Christie, but I had never got this interest of reading those. I just thought that they were too big, I won't understand, I will leave it midway. And so I used to read other books. But it took place 2 years back when I was in 6th grade. My teacher told me to write a book review, and first I was like, okay, I will pick one of these books because I think my teacher will like these books because they're old and stuff. So the first book I picked up was The 13 Problems by Agatha Christie. It's it stars Miss Marple, who is an elderly female detective. And so I picked this book, and I started reading it, but then I didn't find it consists of 13 short stories. So I started reading it, but I didn't find it that interesting. So I actually left it midway. But I had to continue my review book. I had to do it. So I actually picked another Marple book, which was The Body in the Library. And it is about how a common household finds a girl's dead body lying in the library, and how Miss Marple gets engrossed in the engrossed as the detective and finds out the murderer. So when I picked this book, I didn't have that high expectations, but when I started reading it, I was in total love with it. I couldn't rest until I'd finished the whole book, and it was just an amazing experience. So this was how I first came to get to know about Agatha Christie. But I started reading, and now I have read a lot of books. I'm almost done. I have read a few Marple mysteries. I have read a few Tommy and Tuppence. I have read a few short stories and stuff. But coming to the main detective, Poirot, I have read a lot of Poirot books, and I love them. So this is how I first got to know about Agatha Christie. And now I'm going to tell you about what are my favorite books, and if you want to try different detectives, what all books should you first read. Now, Agatha Christie has written many books, and she has the three most famous detectives. The first is Hercule Poirot, and probably the most famous of all, and he's a Belgian detective, and if you look at him, you would not feel like he's a detective and he can do anything, but in fact it's the little grey cells that do all the work with perfection and find the murderer. The second detective is Miss Marple. She's an elderly woman who is not exactly an official detective or anything. She's just she's just a lady who gets engrossed in many cases and solves it with absolute perfection. Now, the third detective or detectives duo is Tommy and Tuppence. It's a husband and wife duo who solve cases with adventure and dramatic scenes and stuff. So I like all of the detectives. I like Hercule Poirot because of the way he solves it, and it's just amazing, and you do not know the victim until the very end. I like Miss Marple because she's like a very peaceful household lady who just gets involved in the crime and always solves it with perfection. And I like Tommy and Tuppence because they are the ones who Hercule Poirot and Miss Marple don't really go anywhere, and the little grey cells do the work for them. But I think Tommy and Tuppence, they go into it, they deal with the victim, with everyone, and they're like very adventurous pair who always solve the crimes, and they go to any sticky situations which they come out of, and that makes me very thrilled. So I love all of them equally. Now let me tell you one of my favorite books written by Agatha Christie. So let's begin with the famous Belgian detective Hercule Poirot. Now I have so many of his books which I like, but I have picked two of them which are my absolute favorite. The first will be this. It is the murder of Roger Ackroyd, and it is about how this man named Roger Ackroyd knows too much and gets murdered, and how Hercule Poirot coincidentally comes into the scene and solves the mystery. And the reason, actually the biggest reason why I love this book is because the murderer is so discreet until the very end. Till Poirot told who the murderer was, I had no clue on it, and there was so much suspense, so much thriller, and I really loved this book. The next book will be a little bit different, and it is The Death on the Nile. Now, this book is generally not really told when people mention their favorite Agatha Christie books. No one mentions this book, but this has always been my absolute favorite. This is my absolute favorite because there are so many murders and there are limited suspects, and it's kind of like it's something like the reader itself has become in the story and is one of the characters, and it's amazing, and that's why I love it. So there's so many murders, and there are limited amount of people who can do it. There's a limited number of people who can do it, and at the end, the finale was just mind-blowing. So it's about like a cruise which goes in through the Nile River, and Hercule Poirot is in that cruise, and there are many other people in that cruise, and there suddenly some deaths appear. There is this criminal also in the cruise. There is the superintendent in this cruise, and everyone is in this cruise, and at the same time so many things happen, and I really enjoyed this book from the beginning till the very end. So these are my favorite Poirot books. I will tell you my favorite Marple book. My favorite Marple book was one which I read first, which is The Body in the Library. I have not read that many Marple books, but I think this will might be my favorite. You can also go for The Murder Was Announced. I do love that book too. Now, Tommy and Tuppence. Now, I have loved Tommy and Tuppence the first book which I read of Tommy and Tuppence was By the Pricking of My Thumbs, and this is about how Tommy and Tuppence have become a little elderly and have become an elderly couple, and how even though they have grown old, they still have the same wits and the same smartness. And I love this book because it was so engrossing, and once I picked it up, I couldn't leave it. And it was a bit different from the Hercule Poirot and the Miss Marple, because this is like two people, and there's this connection between these two people who are going to different places, going to different situations, but they're still going to be looking out for each other, and so there's this real tension between these two people, and I do love the way the story goes, and how it is a bit like the case is a bit ordinary, but how it turns out to be extraordinary as the story unfolds. Another of my favorite Tommy and Tuppence book will be The Secret Adversary. It's actually the first Tommy and Tuppence book, so you can start out with that. I actually have it in my Kindle. It is available in Amazon, everything. So I love this book because in this, Tommy and Tuppence are a little young, but they are so amazing. And it's the beginning, so it's kind of how they meet, how they get engrossed in crime, and it's just amazing because the plot may be simple, but actually it is a whole deal more. It's something to do with the whole the country's defenses and trade unions and all that stuff. So I love that. So those are my favorite books, which I loved, by Agatha Christie. Another thing I would like to say is that Agatha Christie has also written many books are not under any detective, which are not really under any of these three detectives, and they don't have any detectives. And one of my favorite will be And Then There Were None, and that is my favorite. And here is it. So it is my favorite because it's about like these 10 people from different backgrounds who, by some random person, some unknown person, gets collected to one island, and there's no way to get out of the island, but there's no way to come into the island, so they cannot get out of it once they're in it. So they just went in the island and they cannot get out, and one by one the people are just getting murdered. Now at the beginning I was just like, okay, I was like continuously searching for the detective, but then I realized it's not a case of who's the detective. It's the way that the people are getting murdered and how there's this inner meaning to everything. And at the end it was so dramatic, and there was so much suspense and drama that it really I was really engrossed at it, and I actually finished it in some 2 weeks. So this is one of my books which is not by any author, which is not under any detective. There's no detective, but I still love it, and it's by Agatha Christie. So I hope you like this video, and I hope you go and read these books and write in the comments below what all books do you like, and do you like the books which I recommended. Thank you for watching, and go grab the books, and yep, thank you.